What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and I apologize if I sound nasally. I'm starting to get sick. I get sick like once or twice a year, and yeah, so I'm vitamin regimenting it up. But today, you know what else we're doing? We are taking two low-priced or low-cost budget builds of around 500 bucks. I say around, because it's very difficult to take an Intel build and compare it to an AMD build for the exact same price, but I did my best. And we're gonna talk about some interesting things here with this. And I put my own money on the line, so that's always fun.
Cooler Master's Master Key Pro series of keyboards offer 16.7 million color RGB, genuine cherry switches, a variety of sizes, as well as surface-mounted controls allowing full customization without the need for standalone software. Learn more by following the link down below.
All right, so I've got about 1,000 bucks into today's video, so please smash that like button if you guys at least appreciate the effort. But with that said, guys, let's talk about what we got here. We've got two systems, an AMD build, which I showed on Twitter that I was gonna do. I got the new Athlon X4 950, which is a AM4, which uses DDR4, and although it's an older architecture, I think it's cool because it gives you some forward compatibility in terms of socket, right? You could buy an excavator or bulldozer CPU on the AM3 Plus socket, but the problem is you have no forward compatibility. That's a dead end, there's nowhere to go. So at least this gives you some forward compatibility. Although at this price point though, it does limit how far forward you can go, because like the motherboard we're using doesn't have overclocking abilities, and the power supply we're using doesn't allow us to go too big in terms of power draw. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then on the Intel side over here, you guys got mad on Twitter that I wasn't comparing it to something. Like, why would you just do a budget build, compare it? And I haven't really done the budget comparison, so we're doing that for the first time ever on this channel. And we're comparing it to the Intel G4560, which is a dual core 4-thread CPU, so it's got hyper-threading, versus the Athlon's older architecture, but 4 physical cores. So that should be fun. But here's the hard part when you do a video like this, is getting it all to price up evenly, because they're not evenly matched in terms of pricing. The CPU for the Athlon is $59.99. The Pentium is an $89 CPU, and although I got it for 59 bucks at Micro Center, I put the pricing of what most people were gonna pay because one, they don't ship, and a lot of people don't live near a Micro Center, so just to keep things as fair and level as possible, I went ahead and put in there the retail pricing. Also too, even though we're using like the same series of motherboards from Gigabyte for this to try and keep it as apples to apples as possible, even though it's apples and oranges, there's a $20 difference on the motherboards. 69 again versus like 89. So you definitely are paying more for Intel. So let's run through what parts we're putting in here real quick. They both are gonna be running the same exact graphics card, the MSI GTX 1050, not a 1050 Ti, 1050 Ti would have upped the whole thing by like $65-ish. So I want to keep this around 500 as close as possible. Also too, these are the single fan cards, which are more expensive because they're ITX format versus the dual fan card. So in order to keep pricing down, in the description below, when I list out all the prices and all the parts, I use the dual fan, which is cheaper. Same graphics card, just a dual fan, longer PCB and cheaper. So I went ahead and did that. But the interesting thing though is this is the first time I've been able to do a budget build for around 500 bucks that includes solid state drives and not a 128 gig drive, 250 gig drive, and Samsung EVOs at that, because pricing of NAND has really come down. So now for 89 bucks, you can get a 250 gig Samsung EVO. So those are evenly matched. We're also running 8 gigabytes each on these systems of Ballistics DDR4. The speeds on these, actually I can't remember, the speeds are 2400. So they're perfectly matched on that. Again, I showed you the motherboards are pretty much the same exact series, one Intel, one AMD. Neither of them feature overclocking, so that's something to keep in mind. This is an A320 chipset versus an H270M chipset. Actually, there might be a tiny bit of overclocking available on that. And then for power supplies, there are two different power supplies but the same price. We've got the Master Watt Lite from Cooler Master, which is a $35 power supply. And then over here, we've got the EVGA 450B, which is a bronze, whereas this one is just an 80 plus. So 50 watts less, but higher efficiency rating. Again, got this one for 37, so $2 difference. You might be wondering why I didn't buy the exact same power supply. I got them at 2 different times, and the store I went to didn't actually have the EVGA 450B. So I just went with something that was in the same price point and wasn't a cheap knockoff throwaway type of power supply. What am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything here? No, I think that's it. Cases, you have to talk about the case. These are just $25 cases, whatever the cheapest ATX case I could find was. We've got a Diablo Tech Diamond case here, and we've got a Raid Max Comet. These are no frills, try and cut your finger off type of cases because of unrefined sharp edges, no cable management, no lighting. In fact, there might even be only one case fan in each of these. Fortunately, these are low power parts, so there won't be a lot of heat. So that's just a placeholder of 25 bucks. You guys can use any case you want, obviously. So we got a $48 difference here. 526 on the Intel side versus 478 on the AMD side. Now here's where things are interesting, and I'm not sure how I want to proceed. I know for a fact I'm going to build both of these and compare them. But if you add $48 to the AMD build, you could actually remove this guy and include this guy. Now that's an interesting comparison because you've got an R3 or Ryzen 3 1200 versus, which is new architecture, versus 2 cores with hyperthreading, 4 physical cores on new architecture. So here's what I think I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna compare these two, as in like the cheapest entry-level PC gaming builds you can pretty much buy for each platform. And then I think I'll throw in the Ryzen 1200 and then see what happens. Because then we're talking like, this is like $3 or $4 more than the Intel. So with that said, you know what we gotta do now? We gotta build them. I was gonna ask on Twitter whether or not they thought I should do this comparison. I already know the answer, so let's just do it. You know, when I brought out the Ryzen, I felt like, BAM! Why do you keep facepalming when I do that?
This is so cringy.
Now when we're talking just, now compared, so now although, so the clear winner is the okay, we're good now, I got it now. So in all of the tests so far that we've done, the Intel G4560 Pentium has beaten the X4 950 Athlon in pretty much every single test across the board. Clear winner, not even by a margin, just like way out ahead, which I guess makes a whole lot of sense, right? It's more modern technology, it's Kaby Lake processor, although it's 2 cores with hyperthreading. The 4 physical cores of the older architecture just simply are not enough to keep up with the Intel. But then again, it costs you $50 more than what you currently see with the AMD, so you should be getting more performance. But I do feel like if this is your price point, you can't go any higher, then the G4560 is definitely the place you should look. So a couple of titles that were pretty interesting, like Diablo 3, they don't have a built-in benchmark, we just did some playing on that. And even on the Athlon, we're getting a stupid amount of frames, no problems playing it on high settings at all. World of Warcraft was an interesting one though, because that's very CPU intensive as much as it uses GPU for things like shadow rendering and textures and stuff like that. It showed a high frame rate, like it showed a decent frame rate, right? 870 to 90 FPS. The problem was it was extremely stuttery and I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't figure out what was causing that. And then we jump on over into the Intel system. Again, the frame rates were about the same, but extremely smooth. So I couldn't figure out what was happening between those two. So that was an anomaly worth mentioning though. But let's talk about PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, which is a title that so many people right now are playing. It's actually the most played game right now on I think Steam and they had already passed CSGO, if I'm not mistaken, on the last chart I took a look at. Pretty much identical situation on both of these, which is kind of interesting because it is an Unreal game engine, but it's also CPU intensive. And it was, even though the menu, it looked like we were getting lower FPS in the Athlon system. Once we were in the world and everyone was spread out and all those players weren't condensed in that little starting area, then the frame rates weren't great. But what would you expect on a game that is going to leverage CPU and needs CPU? We were getting anywhere between like 30 FPS up to about 55 FPS. In some instances up over 60 if you were in like indoors or something. But still playable experience. Nick played a whole round on his very first time and got down to like what, you were like number 22? 12? Oh, number 12, excuse me. Yeah, I died like, I think I was like the fourth one to die when I played some of that. Anyway, but it was playable. If you're looking at just getting into PC gaming and not breaking the bank and you don't care about all the eye candy, you just care about the story, then either one of these systems would do good, right? $50 more on the Intel, you get definitely $50 worth of performance increase over the Athlon. The Athlon you can have for under $500 easily, like $478 is what I think the total was. But like I said at the beginning of this video, what happens if you have the extra 50 bucks to spend? Should you spend it on the Intel? Or is it worth then going with the Ryzen 3 1200? So let's go ahead and throw this in there, compare it to the Intel again, and then let's see what we've got. I think the story is going to change a little bit. So I installed the Ryzen 3 1200 and redid my tests. And before we get into the results, I guess I should just go ahead and show you the results. Yeah, they did better than the Athlon as we expected. It didn't do a whole lot better than it, which was kind of surprising because remember, it's a new architecture. It's on Ryzen or Zen architecture, whereas Athlon is on old school architecture. And it was still trailing behind the Intel in things like actual games, but in benchmarks like Heaven, right? It got a 1716 in the Intel system, and it got a 1659 in the synthetic. So it was only a little bit higher. It was definitely in between the Athlon and the Intel, which surprised me. It really did. They were so close in performance, I was really having a hard time telling the difference between which system was what when you're moving about them. So I had a little idea. I said, you know, we've got another YouTuber here in the same building. I figured, why not bring him in and see what he has to think? I just got called out because Nick said it was his idea. It actually was his idea. It was a good one. I'll give him that. That was good. Give it, bro. Bring it. There you go. It's my idea now, though.
System 1, let's do it. So 1080p low. I mean, at first glance, it seems to be running pretty smoothly.
No FPS counter, that's important.
Yeah, no FPS counter, so I can't cheat. This is not great for keyboard controls. Oh god, no! Alright, hold on. It seems to be running reasonably smooth. It's a little stuttery though. Alright, this is decent. I'd say it's very much playable. I just noticed a few stutters here and there, but generally speaking, it looks to be a pretty smooth frame rate.
It looks really good. Like the frame rate's actually not that bad. It's pretty smooth. I definitely see what Austin's saying with the jittering, but from afar, it almost sold as you know, just kind of the bike going over like bumps in the road and stuff. It actually, you know, I mean, it's definitely playable. It's not not the prettiest looking thing, I can tell you that, but at least it's playable.
All right, so this is System 2. So supposedly the same settings. At first glance, this looks to be pretty similar. I'm not seeing any stutters, but let me actually get on the motorcycle and stress it a little bit. This looks to be a bit smoother. So before, when I was on the motorcycle, that's where I saw some torn frames, and yeah, a little stutter there. It's pretty close though. Like, I don't think there's any kind of hugely significant performance difference that I can see. But yeah, at first glance, this looks to have a little bit of a more consistent frame rate. Before I was noticing just a little bit of stuttering, but this seems to be a little bit smoother.
As usual, I had to get myself out of Austin's mess. Yeah, this definitely looks a tad bit smoother.
So when you guys refer to smoothness, you're talking about micro stutter kind of?
Micro stutters, yeah. It's definitely not as bad as the other one. It's there, but it's not as obvious, I guess. It's definitely, yeah, to reiterate what Austin is saying, it's definitely smoother. And otherwise, like, things look generally the same.
So back with System 2, we have Diablo. What settings is this running at?
It's the highest settings.
Oh, okay.
So just click in 1, 2, 3.
My StarCraft skills are coming back to me, even though this is nothing like. I mean, this is a pretty solid experience. I don't exactly have a lot of sort of skill or experience with Diablo, but I mean, I would have no problem playing this as is. To my eye, this is basically flawless. Like, I'm not seeing any sort of like major dropped frames or anything like that. I would have zero problem playing all the way through the game like this.
This looks really nice. Like, I'm curious to see what it'll look like on the other machine, but this looks really smooth. Like, smooth frame rate, visuals look really nice. Yeah, I mean, I'd totally play this on this computer again.
All right, back to System 1. And I actually do think I see a little bit of a difference. I'll actually get into some action here, but oh man. This is a lot harder without like any kind of frame rate counter to be able to see like a big difference. Can I go in here?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So you're just forced to use your eyes now.
Yeah. I don't want to use my eyes. I want to use cheating tools. It's really hard for me to tell a major difference here. We might be a little bit slower, but man, it's hard for me to tell any significant difference. Oh man, I should not have gone in here. This is a bad idea. What am I doing right now?
You went to a boss.
Yeah, oops.
And you did.
Yeah, I think the frame rate, if there is a difference, is probably vaguely worse on this one, but I really can't tell much at all. It's very, very close.
If I had to take a guess, I'd say that specifically when we were playing Tom Clancy's, System 2 seemed to be a little bit smoother. As far as Diablo, I would give it maybe a slight edge to 2, but it seemed pretty close to me. I feel like Diablo's a game that there could be a bigger frame rate difference and I can't quite notice quite so much.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I haven't played either game. I don't know what optimization for Horizon is, but
This is what happens when Jay corners us. It's like, hey, try these random PCs. You have no idea which one's right.
So before I reveal which one's which then, do you have a preferred system that you'd rather play on?
I would slightly go with System 2, but it's a pretty small difference. I think either would be totally fine.
I'd do System 2 as well. Like it is definitely like smoother overall, I feel like, especially on the Tom Clancy game, but yeah, I think System 2 is definitely the one that I prefer.
Okay, System 2 is the Pentium.
It really is Pentium. Wow. Okay. I feel like I could be totally happy. Like if I wasn't really looking for them, I don't think I would have noticed them that much.
Right.
It wasn't like ruining the game or anything. But having them side by side, you could tell a difference.
Yeah.
I'm legitimately impressed with the Pentium right now, actually.
The thing that's kind of frustrating though about doing budget builds like this is no matter what price point you pick, you're always going to get those people that say, well, just save up a little more and get this. And then if you saved up more, then you could apply that again. We'll just save a little more and get this. You could just a little more save all the way from a budget build like this all the way up to some stupid like Skunkworks level build if you just kept applying that logic. Because realistically, the next step up for the Intel, if we put it about $20-ish, $25 ahead of the Ryzen system, is to go to an i3-7100. Right? And then we put that in, and then we go, well, we got to use a 1300X. And we put the 1300X in, it's like, well, we got to go with an i3-7350K. And it just never ends. So that's why we're stopping it here, guys. I'm not declaring a winner. I think the Athlon's a really good bargain. I really do. But the Pentium obviously is a better performer, and it should be because it's more money. Heck, it even outperformed the Ryzen 1200 in many tests. So depending on what side of the fence you're on, though, I think you have very compelling options, especially for the budget build. You can get that 60 FPS pretty much without a problem if you're willing to sacrifice down to medium and low settings depending on the title. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna go. Thanks for watching today's video. Who do you think won the competition? Intel, the Athlon, or the Ryzen? I think you got some really compelling options on both sides of the fence, and that makes this kind of an exciting time, especially at the low budget price point. But anyway, also too, we've got, Nick, come over here. Don't forget, guys, you got some merch you guys can buy. We've got Nick modeling the amazing JayzTwoCents shirt in black. He's not even on frame.
Oh, wait.
There he is. You gotta go down a little bit. So there. You gotta go sideways so you can go down and get the shirt. There you go. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.